Hello,
Hello.
hello. You can go. I thought you were doing it, but I thought you were
Hello,
okay.
hello. Welcome to another episode of Ball Over Passion. I'm your boy at George V underscore AFC. With the smooth landing start, we are good to go. Current mate,
There
how
we
you
go.
doing? You good?
Yeah, could have started better, but we move. I mean, that was a fun game to watch, wasn't it? That was
I
a. I
think
mean,
I think it was
I don't know about
incredible.
you, but
Like,
that
look, I
was.
I I kind of wanted. Okay, I wanted to ask initially your opinion, then I'll give over host duties because I think there's just something I wanted to get off my chest because I feel like on Twitter there was a massive misunderstanding in terms of what the game and what happened during the game, and then I feel as though people that went to the game felt like, oh, this was an amazing performance, and they come back on Twitter because it wasn't just you, it wasn't just our friends on Twitter. It's major people like Darren Arsenal, everyone commenting the same thing that everybody who went to the game felt that not only just performances were really good by certain players, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but
Mhm.
just the team in general, they felt that the performance was really good. And I would tend to agree. Like, I didn't agree with what Twitter was saying in terms of it being a difficult performance to go and see, because for me, it was one of our best performances of the season. It was, and we'll talk about the stats and how we did it, but for me, it was everything but the final action. And just because we weren't up 3-4-0, in terms of the general play, it was just phenomenal how dominant we actually were. And when you had to look at like the lineups there, to do this with like the B team, I think was phenomenal because it was one of our most absolutely dominant games. I think technically, if you're going to look by the numbers, it was our most dominant game, even more dominant than Spurs. So um, for me, really, really happy with the performance, and I can't wait to discuss some things because I think there were some players, both PSV wise, namely Sangare and Gakpo, who were past people's opinions, on players and targets that they would like. But I think they showed the reasons why we're not interested. And I kind of warned on
Mhm.
both Sangare and Gakpo, at least on my Twitter. I've talked a lot about them, in terms of their faults and why I'm not a big fan of them personally. But I think we kind of saw a lot of things on show, kind of today, just in general. So, but yeah, no, I'm excited. I kind of wanted to pose the question to you though, after that little spiel where I didn't end up the question. Like, for you, did you have that kind of dichotomy where it was like you going to the game, you felt like it was an excellent performance, and then you come back on Twitter and people are raging? Like, did you sense that at all, or
Like,
were people angry in the stands as well?
no, no, people weren't angry in the stands. The one thing, and I like I said in the tweet, was it a controlled performance or was it a tired performance? That's one of the main features we're going to be discussing today, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what this performance was, and I think a lot of people were watching it at home, and I think getting frustrated that we weren't 2 up, 3 up, and I think some memories of Leeds were creeping in, thinking about how are we going to be able to break this down, because we broke them down in the first half and we didn't kind of go again. Those memories of just games where we just couldn't break teams down, these kinds of things, and I kind of want to talk about it, and we will get into it. But on your question about Sangare and Gakpo, um, when rewatching this game, I barely noticed Sangare. I'm not going to lie to you. I just think that he kind of was a bit of a passenger in this game. Um, Granite just man marked him. I think he really was just he was man marked out of the game. And when we were pressing, and when we tried to, we will discuss the press. Um, we didn't give him time to turn into space, and when we did give him time, he was always met with a body. Because sometimes we did kind of drop off and then attack after he turned, but like there was never times when I was thinking, hang on a second, this guy is able to dictate play, set tempo, and raise them to get out there, even their own half, as we'll discuss in a minute. But yeah, I do want to talk about a couple of things, and we're going to do things a bit differently today. This is a good game to do, and I've been wanting to do this for a while, so we're going to discuss some major talking points today, because there's a lot of talking points on Twitter about players. Specifically today, we're going to talk about Albert Sammy Lakonga, and we're going to talk about this controlled versus um, tired narrative, because I think that's a major talking point of this game, and I want to dissect that. I want to get into that. I want to discuss, was it what the dichotomy was between the two camps, as it were. So let's get into it, and I think we'll start with Sambi. I mean, we've seen Sambi for what, he's been here a year now. He's had glimpses of really good stuff. And George, I'll ask you first before I get into my thing. What is Sambi Lokonga? What is he good at? What is he bad at? What can he bring to this team?
So I think, namely, you want to look at football qualities. All right, let's ignore the position debates because I find them so routine and vague, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. But like, let's look at what Sambi Lokonga is good at and what Sambi Lokonga is bad at. Primarily as a profile, I've constantly described Sambi Lokonga as Alex Song. Anybody who is old enough to recognize would really understand this comparison in terms of what you get with in possession and also out of possession when he first came. So Sambi Lokonga himself. Let's look at the faults. Let's see why I'm not sure of the red flags. But I want to start with the positives because everyone digests positives a lot better than negatives at first. So really positively, he's one of the best in the squad in terms of half turn set. And so what I mean by that is what he's able to do turning the half turn, but not facing his own goal, mainly in space when he's able to turn, get his head up. He has an excellent ability to pick a pass between the lines. I think it's phenomenal. It's very underrated. It's why, for me, when you have him a little bit higher up, he's so devastating. He's able to do it because he's got a great ability to find the space in a back line, and he is very punchy with his balls when he does free his man. So that's something that he's really, really excellent at. And of course, the pace of pass on his ball, it's very fluid. The way that he turns in general areas in terms of possession and whatnot, it's very fluid. So for me, you basically look at that and you've got a very interesting player in terms of his ability on the ball to control. And what's really odd is when he is on the ball, he's very active. Like he's an extremely active possession-based player where he ups the tempo. He's able to aggressively force passes into the channels. He's able to switch balls brilliantly. He did it this year. I believe it was against Chelsea in preseason. You really saw that really great switch out wide where it was a beautiful long ball where he picks it up kind of just off Tomiyasu and has a beautiful switch. He can spray balls excellently. Like his range of pass is really quite good. But the thing is that what you get with Sambi Lokonga is you don't get the same intensity that he carries on the ball as you do off the ball. And so one of his major faults is, of course, third man runners, his awareness of them, it's really poor. And I don't see him scan enough, which is really the big red flag skill wise, which frustrates me because when you start to see, can he fix some of these positioning issues, let's say, can he fix these awareness of third man runners? I doubt a player can fix those things when he doesn't scan often enough. So if you look at Charlie Patino, a similar level talent, let's say, a prospective left center midfielder, the reason that you'd say, okay, Charlie Patino does have some positional quirks, which he does, by the way. Anybody that watches him for Blackpool would know there are some issues there. He's not a complete prospect. But one thing that I always say is, look, if you're able to scan really effectively and do a lot of scanning in your actions when you receive the ball, you're probably more likely down the line to develop that spatial awareness of third man runners a lot more often than not had you not scanned. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
That's why I don't know if he's going to be able to fix that. Secondly, in terms of his intensity in chasing back runners, I constantly say on Twitter, where is his intensity running back to goal? And so that's like in defensive transition. When the ball turns over, is he aggressive enough running towards his marker or running to his man? He doesn't have to be successful in the duel, but I need him to show an intensity to meet his marker. And I don't see that enough. I don't even see it consistently. Like in terms of me trying to find areas where he was, really aggressive in terms of marking and running back to goal, they're very few and far between. And for me, that's a really big issue if you're talking about your anchor who is going to be felt defending space. Like that for me is a big issue. So if you've got that as an 8, you're a lot easier to hide in terms of defensive transitions if you're a little bit higher up and you're not maybe running back to goal. So that's another thing. And then lastly, in terms of his positioning, I think positioning is probably one of the weakest criticisms you can lay at a young player because that is definitely easily fixed. And I think with more understanding of things, he could 100% fix that. But the issue is he gets pulled wide quite a bit, especially when he's tracking runners. Like he's a type of person that is a little bit chaotic in his mind about who he has to pick up because it's not natural to his game. And this was exactly something that Alex Song did. And if anybody remembers, when Alex Song first came in, he was just an incredible talent on the ball. He was the reason he got his move to Barcelona was because it was between the line passes in between, the thirds. Like that was the reason that people loved him. And by the way, Sambi has that. He has what I would think is a very world-class trait in his ability to pick balls between the lines. But just like Alex Song, he was a little bit of a head case and he didn't understand marking people. And he really did his best work when you slowed down his game. You made it simple. You said, look, on the ball, mate, fire balls between the lines, but off the ball, I want you just to stand in position. And sometimes I think Sambi is a little bit too active in terms of what he wants to do to put out fires. And so if you don't simplify his game, he ends up losing markers. He ends up getting dragged, ball watches. How many times have we seen him leave the press in order to chase somebody that he really shouldn't be doing in terms of his pressing trigger? Like he needs to understand a little bit more of these things off the ball. And now when you have a look at it, he's now what, 23 years old, moving closely to 24, next year. Is there something there that I believe in that he can fix those traits at a 6? I don't think so. So when you have a look at it, those are the scouting red flags in terms of a position, right? Now, in terms of what can he be as an 8 moving forward, I think he's got incredible potential, exactly what I said, especially between the lines. When he's in the half space, Sambi Lakunga constantly impacts the pitch. And that's because he's got a beautiful awareness for space, and as well as when to pick the gaps in a defensive line. He shows it constantly whether it was Bodo, whether it was in preseason, whenever he is higher up the pitch, he has an ability to impact. And so for me, we actually see it that, Granit Xhaka, for example, has really taken off his on the ball responsibilities in this new role. We really have Thomas Partey covering for him defensively. There's a beautiful statistic up on the Twitterverse,
Squawka.
by Squawka, that really shows that Thomas Partey does the defensive work for the team in general. And so when you have that and you add Sambi's ability on the ball, he's going to do the role that Granit does in a slightly different way. Granit is a lot more off the ball. Contrary to popular belief, he's somebody that runs the channels and rotates beautifully. Like, he has used this role to really impact the half space by his movement. And I think Sambi is going to do it through his passing. And that's just a slightly different profile, but it's somebody that we can actually definitely keep in the squad to do. Now, my issue is that somebody better than some of the prospects that we have coming up? Is he better than Miles Lewis-Skelly? Is he better than Charlie Patino? I don't know, because Charlie Patino for me is a very similar type. He's going to do it through passing himself. He's not going to be an off-the-ball mover, but he's a little bit more complete in terms of his defensive responsibilities, but he also carries that scanning. So when I start to project, how do I fit Sambi Lakunga in this squad long term, I really struggle, because for me, I still maintain, because of what I've said before, I don't think he'll ever become a 6. That for me is really dead set in my mind. If he surprises me, then I'll hold my hands up. But, I think those are the football reasons why I don't think he can become a 6. But he can definitely become a successful 8. But is he a successful 8 that is better than our prospects coming up? That is where I tend to draw the line, because for me, Charlie Patino is better at being the controlling on the ball type and more complete as a profile. And then I have Miles Lewis-Skelly that's coming up, who is even a lot more physical than Charlie Patino. And so it kind of it begs the question, what exactly are you going to keep him in the squad to do? Because at 24 years of age, he's somebody that absolutely needs, kind of a run in a team. It doesn't matter whether it's with us or it's with elsewhere. He needs to have a run in the team, right? So I personally am of the opinion, like, let's have him go. You could have him go out on loan to see if you spark something. But again, for me, a loan would just be kind of something that you do.
Kick the ball
Um,
down the bucket down the line, basically, sort of thing.
yeah, no, exactly. So I don't know, mate. I don't know. It's kind of um, it's one of those things where if you're debating between what is his best position, it's definitely an 8. If you're debating
Mhm.
between, okay, is it somebody that we can use in the squad generally, either whether it's for squad depth or something else, sure, but is that squad depth going to impede what you have coming up? I think it might. And so
Mhm.
I'm more of the opinion that, especially if we can use it in a make weight for a marquee sale, something that I've always said, Sambi Lakunga would do excellent in Serie A or La Liga, somewhere where he has a lot more time that he can really float those balls. And look, everybody knows my attempted Twitterverse of Leao in a Rice window, but seriously, him fitting in Milan in terms of what they have in their midfield with Ismail Benassier, who is a tempo setter. Because again, for me, Lakunga can't face also receiving back to goal. Like, in the first phase, he's really poor at receiving the ball off the center backs, especially
He
from
needs to
pressure
be
behind.
higher up. Yeah.
He needs to be higher up. So if you don't ask him to be the primary receiver, but you ask him to be a secondary receiver, okay, that's beautiful. That's actually where he's best. And, ideally, you have somebody that has a little bit more defensive responsibility next to him. So Sandro Tonali is an excellent complement to those three. And so together, they would make a phenomenal midfield three in terms of what Milan would want. And,
Just profile setup wise. Yeah.
Yeah, just profile wise, it would be beautiful, and probably, just to help, Sambi, you'd ideally want maybe, a touchline right winger, somebody that's coming out to in. That way, he could slip in a wing forward to run onto the balls. He's amazing at. So, for me, you do that. You go to Serie A or La Liga, a league that isn't so much focused on defensive intensity in those defensive transitions, and so. Um, that would be somewhere where he thrives, or a team that has maybe a lower block that is focused on a little bit more counterattacking in general, and you're releasing these wing forwards. Like that's the type of team. Like when you talk about maybe Company, I don't think they would do it now because Company is more of a JDP kind of possession team. They're not the Sean Dice of old. Maybe the Sean Dice of old type of team would have liked a Sambi Lakunga if you paired it
Mhm.
with a really defensively solid partner who again had a low line. That way, you're not increasing the spaces that Sambi Lakonga has to run into. That is the key issue here, right? And I think when you're choosing leagues that have a lot of space, that way you don't have to focus on the space that he has to defend. Sambi Lakonga will thrive, no matter what that is, whatever team it is. I think for me, that's the type of league that I see him doing really well in. Ironically, I don't think he'll do well in League One. It's a lot more of a physical league, and so I think he'll struggle in League One. I don't think going to Marseille would be excellent for him. I think going to Atlanta, Milan, in Serie A, maybe in terms of, I don't know, in La Liga, I'd have to do a little bit more research,
Valencia or
but
something like
maybe a
this.
Valencia, maybe Sevilla, in terms of with Unai Emery, you got Yeremy Pino on the other side, like that kind of winger,
You mean
he would do
Villarreal?
excellently. Or Villarreal, sorry. Yeah. Yeremy Pino would do excellent with a partner like Sambi Lakonga back. So I think for me, that's kind of where I stand on the Sambi
Yeah.
Lakonga debates. And but I do really push back. This narrative on Twitter now has become that he's shit and he's a useless player. That's hogwash. Like
Yeah.
you shouldn't be. It's a bit of a nuance. I still believe, basically at my core, is I think he's best as an 8, and we have prospects that are coming and that are here already that make the 8 position very clogged. At right center mid, we've got Vieira, Emil Smith Rowe, and Martin Odegaard. And then we've got prospects like Ethan Nwaneri, who is incredible. Like it's not just the cameo. Like he is really highly rated in England. He is going to be coming into the
He's
team for a
15 with the under
next.
21s.
Yeah, but mate, he's too good for them. Like he is going to be in preseason. This isn't a kid that is like 2-3 years away. He is 1 to 2
No.
years away. And
Yeah.
then you go to the left center of midfield. You've got Granit Xhaka, who I have constantly said is going to sign a contract extension. So I
And
see
we
that
think
coming.
will. Yeah.
And I think will. But then you add Charlie Patino. You start to add Sambi because he can play there. But Emil Smith Rowe could play on the left. I don't love him there, but he could. And then you add Miles Lewis Skelly on top of that. Like, mate, that right there is you're talking about 6 players for 2 positions. Like it's
Yeah.
overkill. And then when you talk
It's
about a
too
player that's
much. Yeah.
24, again, yeah. So I've always said
The
this,
adaptation as well. Yeah.
look, I've always pushed this deal because I feel like it's best for him in his career. It's mutually beneficial for Milan, and I think it would be a phenomenal thing for a marquee winger that we know is in the last year of his contract. But still, yeah, that's kind of my ideas on Sambi.
Yeah. So now, just to move on, we're gonna get into what Sambi did in this game because I want to emphasis what he did in this game. And for
Hmm.
me personally, when you look at this game, we have this game for me was trying to get Sambi into our build-up structure. This was a game where we tried the 2-3, we tried the 3-2, we tried putting him in different positions in that 3, we tried putting him in different positions in the 2. We tried playing him in a pivot with Xhaka. We tried playing him in a pivot with Tierney or Tomiyasu. We tried dropping him into the back line. We tried pushing a bit higher. This game for me was about getting Sambi to figure out what do we want to do with him. That was the main, I think, takeaway for me. I don't think it's a lot for a lot of people but when I was watching the game from up high, I was like, they're really moving him about. They're trying to move him in different positions. And um, the main thing I would add in terms of a negative, I think you got all the positives basically correct. But for me, the main negative is I feel like it's not just back to goal, what do you call it? Yeah, back to goal receiving, and turning into space. I feel like he needs someone with him. He needs someone there to help him if he's going to be deep. If he's going to be a bit higher up, that's a different scenario. I think he's someone who can receive and turn into space quite nicely, and we have some screenshots as well. But I want to talk about. I will get into. Well, I just want to show you what we mean. Um, so yeah.
Well, really
Let's
quickly, I'm gonna get this
yeah.
out there because no, he didn't.
He didn't
He was
play badly.
fine. Like, but
He was
again,
fine. It's the
it's
narrative
not.
on Twitter we're talking about.
Yeah, just the narrative on Twitter where everyone said that he was just shocking. And no, like I have my reasons for wanting him to leave the squad that are separate to how he played because he was fine yesterday.
Mhm.
But the issue was with Sambi is because again he showed some of the same faults. He was safe, he was conservative, and he was playing with fear. Something that you could really see in terms of his
The amount of
release
touches
of
he
pass.
took. Yeah,
Yeah, he had poor
exactly.
touches. He was hiding a little bit in the transition. You saw Tierney dropping a little bit deeper more often than not. Lukonga was a little bit higher up the pitch, and you could tell he didn't want to receive the ball off the center backs. And look, I
But
get
yeah,
it because it puts him in a bad light. He's had some very bad um, issues with that, but it didn't mean that when he got the ball, he was wasteful. Like when he did get the ball, he was conservative, but he kept the ball nice. I just wanted more from him because when you're in the Europa League and you're pushing to start, which Sambi should do, you want him to show a little bit more endeavor in terms of his between the line passes, which we've seen, by the way. When he was with Bodo, he had excellent passes in the half space. I think he can do that from a
his
deeper
ability to
position.
find that the assist for Saka in that in the right half space, the layoff for it, is a perfect example of what Sambi can be. Um, Another thing you didn't mention in terms of pros, which I just remembered, his athleticism on the overlap is very consistent when he's in that high left center mid role. Like if we were playing him in the Xhaka role that we've been playing him, his ability he showed in preseason as well, his ability to overlap from the final third into the box, his athleticism to get into positions to make those third man runs or to be on the out on the overlap for cutbacks. I think he is very very good. But yeah, I just want to get into some of the things just to illustrate what I mean by getting him into different positions. So um, basically, if you look here, we're looking at a back three, as it were, with Tomiyasu receiving the ball, and you can see where
It's our 3-2, but this is where
it's our
Sambi needs to
3-2.
be.
Yeah.
He needs to be in between these front two, where Cody Gakpo and I think Till are. Like this is the point though that I was making earlier, where he was far too high and he was hiding in build-up. Thomas
Mhm.
Partey is at the top of that circle, by the way, providing an option for Tomiyasu. Like that's the issue, and he's too far away too regularly. And I think this for me is hiding behind your player, and he's doing it a little bit more. So I think a big thing is if he was just 5 to 10 yards deeper and a little bit more willing to show for his marker, then I
Yeah.
think the criticisms of him yesterday wouldn't be as hard. But
I,
again, this is him being fearful and he's being too safe and he's being too conservative and he's taking himself out of the game here. And so, yeah, I didn't like to see this, but current mate, like I saw this far too often, and I saw
mhm.
Kieran Tierney, who is even worse technically, making more of an effort to be a receiver off the center backs, which to me was
Yes.
crazy.
Yeah. So the main thing I wanted to get across with this was, as George said, hiding behind the first line of the press, basically just try to play a bit higher up. But I feel like when we play with him as the center of the build up, whether it can be a 2-3, a 3-1, either of those two, where he is the central focus, I feel like he tries to kind of get behind someone who he doesn't feel comfortable. He doesn't like being that central figure. I don't know whether it's the angles that he likes being off to the side, being able to receive on an angle and then turn into space. But I just feel like there's as
He
a
can't
central
receive from
point.
pressure, mate. It simply is
No.
when the play is facing Sambi Lakanga, it's great. If the
Mhm.
play is ahead of him and he's facing it, it's great. If he has to receive with pressure or contact from behind, he just isn't able to do it. He isn't able to translate it. And that half turn, look, I think when people say half turn ability, it's predicated by two things.
It's
Can
become
you
a bit
do
of
it
a
in
buzzword
contact?
though.
Well, can you do it in contact and can you do it in space? Okay, Sammy Lakunga has
Mhm.
excellent half turn ability if he's in space. And even in tight spaces, if he doesn't have anybody within his 5 yard radius, he's great. He can turn on the ball. It's very fluid. It's beautiful. As soon as he has pressure, any kind of intensity from somebody within his 5 yard radius and he's asked to receive with his back towards his marker, he struggles. And so
Yeah.
that for me, it's horrible for a six. Like that's what you're going to be.
No, but this is the thing. It's in central zones, especially because
Mm,
you're going to be having to face your own goal and turn into space. That's a major thing, especially as a six. And I feel like he's much more comfortable in these kinds of zones where you can see Xhaka dropping off. You can
Well,
see
even
him
then,
having a bit of
Curran
a
made,
partner. Even then,
but
he's still hiding behind his marker.
he's
Yeah,
hiding behind a marker, and this is what I was trying to talk about. There was so many times, like, look, it might sound harsh, but when I mean hiding, I don't mean to be rude or anything, but even beyond, confidence and like, look, in general, of course he's low on confidence. He hasn't played a lot, and of course he lacks aggressiveness. It's one of my biggest critiques, but he only lacks aggressiveness, guys, off the ball. Because when he's on the ball and when he's facing play, he is aggressive.
he
He does
he
play
he
the
loves
pass.
running into
He
space. He's a
releases.
galloper.
Yeah, and he's not, he also will take the space too. Like if you give him space
Mhm.
and he's dribbling with it, he won't be afraid. He'll challenge, he'll run into space. He has no issue doing those things when the ball is at his feet. When the ball is not at his foot though, he doesn't like it. He's uncomfortable.
No.
And this is for me hiding. Like between these two photos, for me, Curran, they're the exact same issue. Look at him. He's behind his marker both times. And it's not just I've
Mhm.
selected or you've selected screenshots that show it a second or two late. He was having this issue not dropping in between the center backs and making himself an option. Kieran Tierney was far better in terms of making himself available to receive. And for me, that's kind of ridiculous, especially when you consider Kieran Tierney's issues in possession. And this is also why I think Kieran Tierney had an excellent game, by the way, because
Yeah.
no matter what was happening, his burst never left. I must say that, but it was there for everyone to finally see. I told everybody with the MCL surgery, it's got, it's a ligament with a lot of blood supply. There was never issues on his pace not returning, but you finally got to see it on a big stage. And I think Kieran Tierney did an excellent job in the first phase.
Yeah. So we switched it basically. We put Sambi in basically in centre back zones, and you can see here he's in the three. He's dropped in a bit, and we've had Xhaka and Vieira. You can see. I just want to point out, and this is the major reason why I picked this screenshot. You can see Vieira showing for the ball. You can see him wanting it to his feet. You can see him running and showing for the ball, and that's the main reason why I showed this, just to show the difference between Lokonga, who's kind of just trying to move off the ball for a second pass, or to try and move into space fire up the pitch, as regards to a Vieira or even Tomiyasu on the other side, where you can see that Tommy's waiting for a switch, or Vieira's looking to ball to feet. It's not the same issue here. They don't have the same relentlessness to want the ball, to show for the ball. It's not the same, and you can see here that we've got him in the middle centre back role now, and you can see again Vieira um, coming to feet, coming past his marker, running into space, getting into spaces to show for the ball, being an option. So Vieira here can either go turn and run into space, he can play it to Tomiyasu, or he can play it across
Also,
the
to be
line.
fair, mate, like this squad is still learning about Vieira because I said it even during the watch. He didn't get enough touches on the ball himself, but also he's a tight space player. He's like a David Silva, he's a Cazorla. Like he wants the ball under pressure to roll
Mhm.
people. And so I think Sambi even was projecting a little bit of his own fears here because he didn't play the pass often enough into Vieira. I think here it's excellent he does it. But Vieira was showing for the ball quite regularly and he didn't really receive quickly enough, right? And I just wanted to go back because the photo that you showed before, there's two types of rotations that we see on the left side, okay? And when you have your secondary receiver, which just means somebody that is not the first person picking the ball up from the center backs, okay? That is Sambi Lakanga. We've seen Granit Xhaka in this space, but when you do this, the rotation is to put your winger inside and to have your left back, which is Kieran Tierney, high and wide. That's the rotation that you're going to
Mhm.
see here. Okay. Our winger right now, Granit Xhaka's picking up that spot, but Eddie is farther up the pitch. So, we kind of saw that this didn't work. But this is the one rotation where you basically have your center mid forming part of the three, and then you push your left back high and wide and you get your winger inside. That's one rotation. And then the next rotation, kind of when you do have a look at it, is when we've got essentially our left back that's tucked in, and then we have a high um, or I think that a little bit better is more in this position.
Mhm.
You've got like your left back attempting to kind of come back in, but again, Granite here is somebody that has dropped in to allow Kieran Tierney high and wide quite a bit during this game, and I
He's
think these
pulling
two
his
photos
marker away
show it
basically with him as well. He's pulling his
100%.
marker in so Kieran can make that run off the ball. And that is a thing that's a very common rotation, because you need that
Yeah,
space to run into. And our build up is, as we've mentioned time and time again on this show, our build up is so dependent in wide areas. We like, even from the goalkeeper, we like those clip balls to either wing. We like hitting our runners in space. We like getting the ball higher up the pitch via progressive dribbles from our wingers. If you remember last season, our leader in progressive carries was Bukayo Saka, for a good reason, because we liked progressing through the right. He would take a
Yeah, no,
deep
just
right and then progress through the lines.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like really quickly, I think it just shows that, although Granit Xhaka has definitely had, a general position map where he is higher up this season, this match saw a little bit of a return to him dropping deep and become that secondary receiver. And our left hand side rotations, I completely agree. Like they were phenomenal all game. Eddie
Mhm.
had an excellent game. Kieran Tierney, Granit Xhaka was high up doing line breaking passes, which was excellent. But I think this match showed a little bit more of a willingness for Granit to drop deep, and that was because he noticed. For me, it was a response to Sambi hiding a little bit, which we've seen in these photos, but Kieran not being comfortable receiving. And he did it. He did it more than Sambi, but from the off, Granit dropped a lot deeper in this match, and we kind of saw this change a little bit.
Mm.
And yeah, no, he will, but we'll talk about that next.
Yeah,
But I
we'll
think
get
it's
into
time to
that.
get into the press.
I think that's the time. Yeah. I mean, look, the last thing I'm going to mention is, this is the role that we want. We guys want Sammy to do this party role, and he was trying. He was trying to do this that central controller role, but he's just not. It's something that he's struggling with, and he will get better with time. But how much time would we have? And on that note, because we are running long, because I've done that quite smoothly, we're going to go into the press and the intensity of the game, which was the second point I wanted to mention. This game, was this a tired performance, or was this a controlled performance? Was this a game that we really looked to? Um, we look to just see out and try to just conserve our energy like a Leeds, or is this a game where we went on the front foot?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a
And
game that we
yeah.
yeah, like, I think it was definitely a game that we went on the front foot. Sorry, you transformed. I didn't know how often you would stop, but it was definitely a game that we went on
Oh,
the front foot, and, the field tilt was just incredible. It was, it showed an extremely dominant performance, and, Ruud van Nistelrooy made note of the press and the fact that defensively as a team, it wasn't the instruction. They just couldn't beat Arsenal's press, and, they won so many duels, and that was really why we ended up choking them. Like, I don't understand this idea that, we weren't dominant yesterday. And just because we didn't have output doesn't mean that you weren't dominant. You can be dominant, have a very controlled performance, by the way, control all the territory, and still lack a final action. And I think for me, it was really, really clear. Like when you look at things like the field tilt, like there wasn't a point in the match that PSV
mhm,
ever got out. So this idea that Arsenal, were struggling, or played a poor game or were fatigued, I think is really poor in this match. Maybe in previous matches, but this was definitely an increase in terms of the performance levels, and people were a lot more willing to run in this kind of performance. So sorry, but go ahead and complete your press point.
we good? Okay, good. Yeah, all I was going to say is, um, just to ask the question again. Controlled versus fatigued, and the main thing that can contribute to this is the press, and as you mentioned, the field tilt. But let's break down the press. What was the press this game? Because I feel like there's a lot for me anyway, watching it from the stands, of watching it high up, you can see the press. You can see it moving side to side. You can see it being a 4-4-2 bullseye press. It's very clear.
Well, the press,
And
I've been highlighting it on my Twitter. Sorry, like really quickly, like
mm,
what is the tactical adjustment from last season to this season that's been really stark? It's been the press. Like the press
yeah,
has been our major,
our
major
PPDA
difference.
is ridiculous.
Oh, it's been incredible. Like when you combine it with the defensive high line, how high our line is so consistently. Our PPDA, by the way, which is just basically pressures that kind of draw a relationship to how much man marking you may do. By the way, but last season we were very poor on PPDA, and that's just because our press wasn't as man to man, and we made a lot of changes and had it quite zonal last year, but we didn't have the individuals to go man to man. Now and in this season, we're far more doing, a man-to-man press and a lot more marking schemes that we see. We saw it really clear, for me, when you kind of have a look at what has changed, we've closed the distances brilliantly, and we've used the press as a chance creation tactic to improve a lot of the rotations that we see up in attack. So Yeah, for me, we've had probably the biggest improvement, by the way, in our defensive line, bar Newcastle. We have upped the line the most instead of Newcastle. These are two teams that have performed excellently and have been rewarded for that bravery. And Spurs and Liverpool really showed you kind of man marking schemes that were really quite stark in terms of how Mikel wants to line up. And I think the press here was no different in terms of the 4-4-2 that
Mhm.
you mentioned, Curran. Like I
I mean,
think
let's
that
get it out.
generally wingers were asked to drop deep to really deal with the Xavi Simons and Cody Gakpo threat, which we highlighted in the preview. I felt that Cody Gakpo, look, he showed the same things. Like I was trying to tell people, on Twitter, he's just somebody that can't go on the outside. He doesn't have that 5 yard burst to really take his marker out on the outside, so he constantly cuts inside. And we asked our wingers to really double up on Cody Gakpo on his side, but also on Xavi Simons. We asked Eddie and Kedia to really drop deep, and they were really responsible for helping out their fullbacks to make sure that the break when it was on was minimal. And that's how, for me, PSV were unable to get out because we cut the channels and the entry passes into their two transition threats. And
This
again,
is this is yeah.
Ruud van Nistelrooy made mention of that.
Mm. Yeah, I think the biggest difference, because if you look at their block was a 4-5-1, but it was very, very narrow. They were always in between the box. They were very, very compressed and tried to basically cut off central zones. Whereas with us, our 4-5-1 in the block at times when Eddie would rotate onto the left wing, we wouldn't left. I was saying to the guys I was with, they compress ball side so much and they leave so much space far side. And a lot of teams are
Hmm.
doing that against us because they're so wary of our wide threats. So they kind of compress to that side and they drag, and they leave a lot of space for the far side for the switch, and they take that risk, they take that gamble because they don't want to do that. But with us, our 4-5-1, we have our left winger rotate on the out. We have basically their right winger threat nullified. We don't let that happen.
Well,
We
it's kind
understand
of
that we're better than
well,
them,
it's
basically.
kind of it's lopsided, right? So let's get into the press, right? So like if you have the ball
Mhm.
down kind of at the center back, and of course here you can't really quite see the 4-4-2, but only just because of the size of the screenshot, he wasn't really
Yeah.
in play when you did it, but it's really quite clear here. What we basically had was our top two wingers stop the entry pass into their pivot, and so we were asking a lot of questions of Sangare to receive under pressure and turn, and this is also
And
why I don't think
Xhaka was
Sangare
man
did
marking
very
him
well.
very good. Xhaka was man
Yeah, no,
marking him very
yeah,
well.
yeah, and those two deeper ones, Fabio Vieira and Granit Xhaka, were our cover shadows. So initially,
Mhm.
Eddie and Kedia and Jesus, if you noticed, even here, I didn't see them as aggressive to the goalkeeper in their first phase. They actually allowed Romaglio, who for PSV had a beautiful game, their right center back. He was actually a really impressive player.
Yeah,
But he allowed the first pass. They allowed Ruud van Nistelrooy's team to have the first pass from the goalkeeper to their center back, and then we basically just stopped the entry pass in the midfield. And this is something that I was really looking forward to seeing. But again, Sangari showed up how he can't really be an option for us if you're really looking at prospects for me, because anybody that gets that amount of time and space really should be able to quickly turn on the half space and get their team going. Because we made it difficult, but he was in space and it was basically asking, could you or Gutierrez receive deep and be able to progress your team, and they couldn't. Um,
I mean,
and
I wanted to ask you something, because this is how I felt watching the game and rewatching the game. I felt like we gave him time, but the minute he tried to turn, we were on him. I feel like he was a trigger, but like it wasn't like as an instant trigger. It was a turn trigger. Like the minute he turned into space, Xhaka just went for him. I don't think
I, I think
we
simply,
were
mate,
too
he was
tight.
he was a pressing trigger for me, really simply.
He
Like
was
I mean,
but I think there was a delay. I don't think Xhaka was always, the minute he got the ball. I feel like we tried to bait him into trying to do something, and he would
well, you
lose
know
the
what
ball
it
consistently.
Kinda, you know what it was? It was more so I felt at least that they allowed the first pass. That's what it was. Like
Yeah, I mean
our
that's if
top
you want to put it
2
simply. Yeah.
our top 2 just didn't press and harry the way that we've seen in previous, and so, like, when you
Mhm.
have this press, and we'll have a top up here, look, and this is just from the photo, right? Like, that left wing could have become Saka, let's say, if the ball was more on the right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is kind of the difference between our lopsided press, right? But the far side winger always joins, and it basically makes a banana run to stop the goalkeeper from switching it to the now left side, right? Like, the ball's on
Yes.
the right, and so they're trying to force the play to the left back, the white left back themselves, and they don't want to switch out to the right. And so our left wing, which has typically been Martinelli, but was Eddie Nketiah in this game, typically makes a banana run and really harries and hurries the first ball out. Now, what I did see was Eddie Nketiah block the pass to the right side, but Gabby Jesus wasn't intent on really pressing the goalkeeper or their center back as much. And we basically hurried where, again, like you said, mate, like, Granit Xhaka was tight to Sangare, and of course, Fabio Vieira was tight to Gutierrez, and they stopped
Mhm.
that entry pass into their pivot. Our In general, I thought that our wingers were supremely deep. So you saw Saka here. Normally, he's 5 to 10 yards higher up the pitch, but here he was a lot deeper, and he basically went man to man with the left back. And then when Cody Gakpo did get the ball, if he did, despite being super deep, he joined Tomiyasu in making sure to kind of help out that 1v1 isolation moment. And so you obviously see it here where, Saka doubles up on their major threat, and he knows that Gakpo is not really able to go inside. And so this was a really easy way to crowd out PSV whenever they got the ball. So for me, this is kind of why the press was just beautiful, because the same thing worked on the opposite side. Whenever Xavi Simons got the ball deep in the middle third, Eddie Nketiah tracked
Nketiah,
back
yeah.
beautifully and paired up with Kieran Tierney to really stop anything. And the exact same press was happening. So they really had a lot of pressure in midfield. Um, but we stopped the front from being as hurried in the press, which normally it is. So that's the big tweak that I think Mikel did. And despite starting Gabby Jesus, who I think had actually a better game, he needed this, by the way. I thought he was really poor in his previous game, technically against Leeds. Like, I think there was moments where he was really, really loose, and here he was a lot better technically, but he still had some moments where I think he could have done better in the final action, but so could the whole team. But he wasn't as endeavorous with the press. Like, the
Mm.
front two clearly laid off, allowed the press to happen, but once the ball got into the pivot, they were super aggressive to make sure that they couldn't turn.
No, for me, and this is a good transition too, because um, and the tired point I'm trying to get across is one of the themes of this podcast is um the the endeavor was there, the press was there, and the endeavor in tracking back was there. We were not just letting people go. We weren't just retreating to a block and trying to just to ride it out. We were there, we were pressing, and this is one of the main themes of today, because I feel like we're in years past, we might have just tired out after 45, after 60 minutes, and just like Leicester away last year, like sort of just retreat into a block, we just run out of gas and sort of just try and get through the day, get through the game because we've got our goal and we don't know what to do. Um, this game for me was about, and we can have a look at that in a sec, but the main point I'm going to make is we tried a lot of things. We tried a lot of things, and things didn't always turn out as we wanted. There were a lot of almost chances, or there was a lot of things that we tried that didn't come off. Like I've got a couple here.
Well,
The Fabio
again,
Vieira cross is
and
the main one for me.
yeah, we'll get into the Fabio Vieira one, but just really quickly, I wanted to show the passing network just to show how deep the press was and how high we were. Like, look at the average positioning of our team and how tight this team is. There is zero space between the lines, both between midfield, between defense, and between attack, and they're not spread out. Like, this for me is the beautiful part. And then when you compare it to PSV Eindhoven, who absolutely were camped in their own half, and quite often they had Cody Gakpo and Till attempting to get the ball, but it really wasn't until Noni Madueke that they had a chance or two off. But
Yeah,
it's really quite clear in terms of the average positioning over here how much the press had really impacted their ability to get out of their own half, because they just didn't. You could see it very
at
clearly
all.
here. And we were so high up under the halfway line that everybody was so close to each other. You couldn't play through Arsenal. And that was very purposeful, by the way, Curran, just really quickly before you get into Fabio Vieira, that the fact that we were so tight in our lines is so that they didn't get space to release their outlets in Cody Gakpo, in Xavi Simons, in Noni Madueke. And I want to put everybody's eyes to Rob Holding, who had a very underrated game. I call him Bob Balding. It's somebody that, I have an issue with long term, but he had a brilliant game. He really did. He had a very good progressive game this game. I think he was very underrated in what he did. But I think that generally over here, you could see that the team was really, really close to each other, which was excellent to see. But yeah, do you want to go into your Fabio Vieira
Yeah,
transition?
so the main thing I wanted to talk about, and as I'm just gonna say, just to say, Fabio, as you mentioned earlier in the pod, the squad is still getting used to Fabio. I think he is someone that wants to get into space, turn into space, as you mentioned perfectly well. But he also has this ability to get into the final third. Anywhere around the box is a crossing threat. Anywhere
Mhm.
around in either half space, either byline, is a threat. We have a threat there, and we saw we tried to see the in this game, we try to see him try this cross here, which is a lovely cross. You can see the Jesus run. The
Well,
one
this
I
is what
mentioned
you
in
get
the
from this is
Boda preview from the first leg, the one from the back, the instead of the back post this time, it was to the middle of the goal.
This
But
was
yeah,
gorgeous, Curran. Like, you know what? This is what you get with Fabio Vieira. He is probably he has the most precise half space cross in the squad. Just factually, like it's so precision based. A lot of people when they saw that, they saw Kevin De Bruyne stuff, but I think Kevin De Bruyne has a little bit of a different technique. It's a lot more power based, and he whips it into space. Fabio Vieira is so principled in terms of where he's guiding it. He knows exactly the run that Gabriel Jesus is going to make, and this was just a beautiful cross. And it's just too bad that Gabby wasn't able to make the connection, because I think when you do have it, it was just a little bit wide. But that cross from deep, by the way, is what Fabio Vieira is about. He will unlock a low block with no problem. He didn't do this enough. Now, he didn't get himself on the ball. Again, I do think it's because the team struggled to find him between the lines. He was asking, he was showing for it, but I don't think that people know him quite as much. And they're worried about him receiving in tight spaces, but he likes that. He likes the contact. He's that kind of David Silva-esque player who thrives off tight spaces, and he really wants to gain his markers tight and turn them. And then he has the quality to deliver this kind of cross. So I think he needs a little bit more confident, because the more of these types of crosses that we get, the better that we're going to see, because this is just world class play.
yeah. I mean, and the point I'm trying to make is from this Fabio cross, obviously Jesus attempts it and tries to. There's plenty more of attempts I can bring up. I can bring up the corner where Jesus basically just kind of chucks himself at the ball at the far post. There's chances from Xhaka when he just pulled the ball wide. We had plenty of opportunities. But I want to make a key point about effort in the final third, because another thing people are saying is that we were lackluster in the final third, which is I do agree in terms of execution, but not in terms of effort. You're still seeing the same runs, and I've got a perfect scenario to say this. We've got Tomiyasu here with the byline, laying up for a cross, and you can see 1, 2, 3 men across Nketiah, Saka, and Jesus, and you can still see Xhaka. He's still making those third man runs. It's a bit difficult to see, but you can see 3 players in the middle as the cross goes in, and Saka as well. He's still making those third man runs. We're still getting 4 players in the box, crashing constantly. The same rotations are occurring. It's just sometimes we don't get 4 goals. You get 1 goal, and I think the lack of patience and the lack of foresight in terms of some of the narratives that are going about, I think we have to realize not everything will go in, not everything turns out perfectly every time. The fact is we're creating high volume and high XG chances, carve space crosses, byline crosses, crashing the box with multiple men. These are the things that you see in highly successful teams. And this is why we are one of the best teams in terms of shot creating actions this year, because we have men crashing the box. We have men overlapping either side. We have the ability to produce cutbacks. We have the ability to produce byline crosses, half space crosses. We're great from corners. I mean, it's literally we have a lot of different methods of chance creation, and these kinds of
Well,
things are very,
well,
very key.
Well, absolutely, and one of them is that Shaka third man run, which
Mhm.
he has been doing excellently, so often, and I think it's his movement. I was talking about earlier how Sambi Lakunga kind of performs that left center mid controlling role a little bit differently through kind of passing, but Shaka's been doing it through off the ball movement, which has been crazy, because I was told he had no agility in tight spaces. But look, generally, I think Odegaard kind of picks up the ball and he gets us going here, because I think his introduction, I think it's a little bit loose to say that it's what caused the goal. But you know what? One thing is Bukayo Saka. We haven't talked about him. He was man of the match by a clear
Yes.
country mile. That boy was doing things that were crazy all game. He, by the way, deserves huge credit, because I think people were claiming he had a slow start to the season. And I kept telling people, guys, this is a boy that right now, not only has he got 8 goals and assists in his last 7 previously to this, but the way he was moving, he was just toying with people. And everyone saw that moment where he picks it up in his own half and he draws 4 players next to him and he just calmly slots it out, to Granit Xhaka to make a switch on the left-hand side. But, Saka was just immense. But what I've noticed is he's got much more of a pennant for attacking the back post. And you can already see here, Odegaard will pick it up. And then, Bukayo Saka's got it. And he's already got 2 players. He's got the Jordan rules on him. And again, they were just so fearful of him. Not only was the left back on toast, but everybody was just so fearful. He carried this aura, Curran, in this game where for me, he was so aggressive in his final action. He was constantly probing to kill people on the outside, kill people on the inside. It didn't really matter. He was focused about going forward. And I think he's been picking his moments a lot more intelligently about when to turn on his pace and when to turn it off. And it's been really, really smart. They really only way that they could stop him was, hacking him down, and how he kind of got his knock. But, once Bukayo receives this position, he kind of, filters it out and to Odegaard, who for me plays a simple pass and releases quickly. This is all that I can ask of Martin Odegaard, and he does it well. But Tommy makes a beautiful run. This here for me, by the way, when I was earlier in the season saying our right back needs to be more dynamic to create an overlap and give them an option on the outside, in and out, both sides. Like that is vital for what we're analyzing here for any kind of structure. And look, Ben has been doing it amazing. I think Ben, the reason I had him, by the way, right back, another little narcissistic pat on the back, is because he's got way more running power than Tomiyasu does in the final third. He's also got a lot more varied of a cross, but I want to have a special shout out to Tomiyasu here because on the overlap, he makes a brilliantly stand-up cross out to Granit Xhaka. Like it fools everybody. And so for me, it was a beautiful football intelligence kind of moment because, he could have gone back post towards Eddie Nketiah, which is a much tougher proposition. He could have gone back to Bukayo, but he makes a great standing cross out to Xhaka, who then smashes it, weak foot.
Weak foot.
Weak foot. His ball striking has never been in question, but this year it's even far and away his most productive season, we've basically seen. And, I just think that this whole move, it took a while to get. We were probably starved of a goal given how teasing the fluent buildup. There was a lot of foreplay happening with Arsenal in this game. And so, I think we missed everything but the final action. But this little bit of play was quality. And I think it really comes down to Tomiyasu and his stand-up cross because it's something that I always question with him, but I think he can show more effort and potential. And like he's got the technique. I need him to do it a little bit more. And he needs to provide himself to be an option because when you do, you get cases like this. And, the goal was just more than we deserved, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, a couple of things to mention. One, on the Xhaka goal itself, that is an Erdegaard lone run. That is a third man run. You run into the box, you peel off, and you create the space. The block collapses, you create the space, peel off, and the cutback comes. Another high XG chance creation. Another situation where you have space in the box to strike the ball, and he strikes it first time. What more can you ask for? That's a great goal on the Tomiyasu overlap. Look, we've been saying it. We've been trying to say it for over a year now. We're going to move to a 6 lane attack, and if you need a 6 lane attack, you need wide fullbacks to be able to stretch the pitch, to fill in on the wide zones and basically create chances from those wide zones. We have it in Kieran, and Tomiyasu's doing the same thing, and this is a great game for him. I think needs a shout out for the way he. I mentioned it on the timeline about how Haas was saying that he was Gakpo was rubbish, and I was saying, well, it's a bit harsh because he's against one of the best 1v1 defenders in our squad, if not the best, and he got doubled up a lot. And the passes to Gakpo were overhit or underhit consistently, and this was a theme throughout they were so hurried on the ball. They were overhitting passes consistently.
They lost all composure, right? Like I think, and look, it's a credit to us, but just really quickly looking at the stats, like it's incredible, current mate. Like you're talking almost double the amount of passes completed. Of course, 60% possession is always very nice. In terms of open place shots, 17 to 14, 8 shots on target to their 1. 25 shots versus PSV Eindhoven's 4. The expected goals are 3.3 compared to 0.2 to terms of the final third entries, the field tilt is hilarious, 87% to
The
12%.
expected
Um,
threat of minus zero point 0.1 is hilarious, I think,
Oh,
I
it's
think that's
hilarious, and you
that's
look
funny
at
as
the
well.
running XG of the model, like, there wasn't a time where PSV ever had a sniff in this game, and when you have a look at some of the shot match, like, these weren't poor shots off target, these weren't poor shots that are outside the box, these were very high, as the name implied, XG, chances inside the box, and, I think generally when you have a look at some of the attacking pressures that we really had, they legitimately didn't have much beyond, I would say, like, the first 5-10 minutes, which again, you kinda see here, by the way. It starts really from the 10th minute on, where PSV were still looking in the game a little bit. But then once we got started, once we turned on the class, it really kind of showed from there. And, in terms of this shows why Bukayo Saka for me was clear man of the match. Like in terms of goal probability added,
Yeah.
he was just somebody that was far and away a level above this competition, but also all the players on the pitch. He finally showed for me, he's really bubbling Curran, not just as world class. Here on this channel, we've been calling him world class for over a year now.
Yeah.
He's showing he's one of the best dribblers in the world, like not just top two, in the league. I'm talking top
Can I just
three in the
quickly
world.
just talk on his dribbling because there's been an evolution on his dribbling. The fact that he's not reliant on his pace anymore. He's not reliant on his pace to beat his man. He's using his body. He's developed the upper body strength. He rides challenges. He
Mm.
turns people. His ability on the turn is improved dramatically. His ability just to draw people in and then kind of just even back to goal and then back to them and then just kind of turn them into and just go free. He's a phenomenon. His ability just to like I don't know if you remember there was a
No,
segment with
he's
Thierry Henry and Carragher when they were saying, Thierry was saying, "I don't need to beat 11 men. I need to beat 3 men to get to the goal. I
yeah.
don't
No,
view it like that." And he was saying that if you
sorry, I'll
look at
go back to
how
the spot here because
yeah,
we're still on Bukayo.
where you look at Bukayo now, when he looks wide, he's not looking at anything else. He's looking at his man, that left back. I just feel sorry for him. And then he's looking to take on their centre back and then go inside. There's no, it's ridiculous. He's got nothing. There's no one that's able to compete right now. And I
Yeah, and
mentioned
look at
yesterday, it's I think
it.
Dembele is amazing, but I think Saka's better right now, and I will stand by that. And
That's
yeah,
why I say he's in an argument now. He's moved past that world class. Like if you
he's in
always
a
go by
Vinny
world
argument
class,
now.
yeah, mate, he is in Vinicius Jr. is probably the only winger on the planet right now that can chat to Bukayo Saka in terms of his effectiveness, and he's reaching that
Mm.
level of aura and inevitability that just makes it beautiful because I think, I agree, some of that runs that he made, it deserved a goal, what he was doing, but it was just so clear in terms of his goal probability added. But, I don't think you needed stats to know that. But Bukayo Saka was just on another level yesterday. But then also XG buildup. It's why I mentioned Rob Holding, by the way, having a phenomenal game. And it kind of shows a little bit more in this graph. So that talks about a little bit more about what contributes the most to our buildup here. And Rob Holding had a very underrated game, and I can't because I call him balding, and I really give him a lot of shit.
Mhm.
But like when you have a look over here, he had a really incredible game in the first phase. He was doing a lot, and Granit Xhaka dropped deep quite a bit. And look, shock horror, Gabriel, new contract, had an excellent game himself. But Granit Xhaka was just far more responsible for dropping deep a little bit more in this game, and I think it came down really to Sambi Lakanga, who was struggling to show, which we kind of showed a lot earlier in the stream. And this is why Granit Xhaka showed up so highly here. He normally did this of seasons past, but this is the rotation where we see Granit Xhaka dropping into midfield more, right, Curran? Like, this is why you see him show up so well in this game. He's normally not like this. If you look at our previous XG buildup, you've got, Martin Odegaard, you've got Bukayo Saka, William Saliba that really contribute to these buildup areas. Ben White, those are the players that you start to see in the top two. The reason we saw this with Granit Xhaka was because he was dropping deep quite a bit more, and we saw Kieran Tierney high and wide. Which, look, it's a rotation that works on its own separately, but I think this is just part of the reason that we again struggled a little bit to see, Sambi in the game, just in general. But look, in general, um, Rafael
That's
Leao
for
or
you.
Saka, I mean, for me right now, look, Leao is the more potent player, of course, but Bukayo, I'm going to take him. He's a lot more complete in both areas of the pitch. Leao isn't the same player on the right. He's very much
I'll tell you what it is, right? Bukayo has that ability off the ball, I don't think Rafa has that ability off the ball
Well,
that
and also zones
Bukayo
of the
does.
pitch. I don't think Rafael Leao can go on the right and do what he does on the left. He can't do that. I don't think Rafael Leao can drop deep and effectively progress play as much as Bukayo
No,
can. And but in terms of the final third, I think Leao's got more of your traditional pace and power. He's a lot more
he
explosive
doesn't. He
than
doesn't
Bukayo
feel
is.
people. People. He doesn't. People just bounce off him. You just don't.
Yeah,
Rafa
yeah.
doesn't feel anyone.
He's a little bit different. But look, I won't argue. I think Rafael Leao is one of the top wingers in the world. That's why I want him. But
Yeah.
you've got basically him, Vinicius Jr., Saka. Like,
Mhm.
there's not many people um, that can really chat to Saka in this form right now. Even Mohamed Salah, who's an excellent finisher right now. I think Bukayo, he's on the precipice of really exploding. I guess like this performance really showed to me a different level of aura that I think he's always had. Um, but yeah, I mean, I put Vinicius Jr. up there because for me he's the best winger in the world. So like,
Let's get it straight. I mentioned Vinny. It wasn't even George.
I know.
So
I love Vinicius. People don't know this about me, but many years ago when we had an opportunity, I don't know if people remember, but in 2020
I
when
do because you
Vinicius
bring it
Jr.
up
was out,
constantly.
I remember I said I'm willing. He is the one outlier, Vinicius Jr. that I know is going to be world class, but I'd be willing to spend 100 million pounds on him back in 2020 when everybody and there was an option and then we had links. Edu Gaspar did try to sign him. Um,
Mhm.
I thought that would have been phenomenal. But anyways, we are fan fictioning at this point. But just in general, mate, like in terms of the game, what did you make of it? What did you learn going forward? And what do you think
Yeah.
we can take to Southampton?
Yeah. So in terms of this game, look, the main thing I want to get across is that this was not a game where we struggled. I think that's the main key point. I think that is. I think I don't know how many people have been saying it, but I just want to reiterate: we didn't struggle in this game. We weren't trying to hang on for a draw or hang on for a win. We went out there. We stayed in their half. We told them you weren't going to get out, and they didn't get out. We kept our block steady. We kept our press high, and we didn't do anything. They didn't produce anything. They produced negative expected threat. We cleared the ball 5 times in the entire game. That's ridiculous. Like there was nothing. They had 2 shots. Um, Look, I just think that there's a real issue with, I think people getting um, lost in the issues with the final third. I think the effort was there. It's a young team, and the effort is always going to be the main thing because performance levels are going to get better. They're going to get up. We're going to keep going. They're going to keep going. And you see with I mean, we can bring this up quickly. We can see with Gabby. We can see his contract. He's what 23 years old. He's signed a long term contract. I'm thrilled to hear that. I think that's a great piece of news. Um, I think he's someone that we really need to secure. And you mentioned it earlier on the timeline. I've come off the timeline, but this is a major, major coup for our back line. And you could see with his performance today, aggressive, good in duels. And Rude said it as well. We lost this game because of duels. We didn't lose this game because of
Hmm.
the lack or whatever other things. He said the press and duels. We couldn't get out of our own half. We defended very low. That was what lost us this game. And I think that is a good assessment instead of thinking, oh, well, we didn't win by 4, so it was definitely we didn't really dominate the game. No, we completely dominated the game. 87% field tilt, 3.3 XG. I mean, come on now. This is not a game where we underperformed. It was just one of those nights. You don't get 3 goals every game.
Yeah, I think look, it's a little bit. I just didn't agree with the timeline. I thought it was a beautiful performance. I thought that
I'm glad I wasn't on it. I'm glad I was at the bloody game.
Yeah, really quick. You know, I am yelling at Gabriel Michael Hayes to have a contract extension for so long. I've been telling everybody, look, after the first three of William Saliba, Bukayo Saka, and Gabriel Martinelli, we know about those, and those are happening. Okay, Gabriel is the next person that we needed to tie down very, very quickly. And look, I've always defended Gabriel. I've really resisted against the narrative. He's become supremely underrated. When I have a look at him, he's such a vital component to our back line. He's an aerial dual monster in both boxes that guarantees an abnormal amount of goals per season in the Premier League. He has an incredible response to mistakes. He's a really dominant channel defender, a great between the line passer. He often steps into midfield and starts that, by the way. He's a better line breaker than even William Saliba and Ben White right now. And he's taken that role. He has some trouble
Fulham
receiving.
goal. The Fulham goal is a perfect example.
Perfect
The
example, but
Masraoui, yeah.
he is a massive asset that, when fully grown, is gonna be 100 million pounds. No problem. His mistakes are
That's
really
the
quite
perfect
simple.
comment. He's Kolo Touré. He's our Kolo Touré. He's
Sure.
that is a very good comparison. And the last thing I'm gonna say before we do sign off, um, this is the main thing I want to talk about, and this is the main thing I wanted people to take away from this podcast and this show is there's a difference between underperforming in front of goal and underperforming in the game. I think that's the major thing.
Well,
Struggles
it's
with finishing
basically this.
and putting things away. Yeah,
It was everything but the final action. Like, if you wanna say we
yes.
underperformed on goal, sure, but, like, as a team performance, no, it was one of the most dominant
Oh.
team performances of the season, by the way. So no,
This is what people are craving for, 60% possession, constantly in the other person's half, the Man City stuff. Like,
yeah.
that's what people have been clinging for, and the minute they get it, it's sort of like, and not Alex, 'cause I know Alex, it's not a proper way Alex, but this is the thing, when people get mixed up between when people get what they want and still aren't happy, I don't even know what the issue is at this point. So,
Yeah, no, look, he did
yeah.
a lot, but I wanna finish up, on the Gabrielle, because, I talked about all those things. Look, he does need to more consistently receive a little bit better. A lot of, the coaching that has gone into Gabrielle's gait, and, he entered football so late, with Avivi. He only entered, 2 years before he went to Lille, by the way. Or no, sorry, 1 year before he went to Lille. He started at, like, 18. He didn't have a football academy education. He then traveled to Lille. Lille put him on, um, a loan for the first year, and then he had his title challenge, and then we bought him. So he
Yeah.
had only 2 years at the top level of sport before he was bought. And then when you have a look at it, right, like, he's a 24-year-old left center back, left-footed, who's a leader type. Like, I think there is no reason why you can't understand somebody growing with the team, let alone, somebody who's been here from the very start. And center back partnerships are key, not individuals. I keep saying this on Twitter, and Mikel, by the way, keeps having to
It's
hammer
my
this
my
point
key
out.
phrase.
I mean, center back partnerships are something that he constantly talks about. So for me, he fixes a lot of what Saliba's poor at, by the way. The aerial
Yeah.
dominance in both boxes, fixing crossing balls that are coming in from wide. That's things that Saliba really struggles with. Is Saliba the better build-up orchestrator? Sure, no problem. But they are such yin and yang in terms of what they solve for each other. I don't understand. It's really unnecessary, and it's completely. He's become very underrated, current. Like, he really just
Mhm.
has, and
And,
and that's
like,
just the simplest way to put it. And I'm just so happy that he's here. He's here until 2027. And at the very least, look, if we find somebody that is more complete, which is a lot harder than not to find, I think a lot of people assume that there's a better name than Gabrielle out there for the package. Everyone keeps telling me, yeah, we need to find somebody that's a little bit more technical, but also has the same dual dominance. Can you name me really somebody beyond one or two names that are insanely priced, that are better than Gabrielle? And even then, I would disagree with you. There isn't somebody for me that is as physical. And if you're going up against Erling Haaland, by the way, Gabrielle is one of maybe 3 defenders in the world. I would be very comfortable with that physical battle. Very comfortable. He is an incredible channel defender. And look, do I want competition for him? Absolutely. I kept yelling that, we should get Evan and Dicka for now over a year. Okay. Like, I know that there's an opportunity there, and we've got a link. So yay. Yeah, you're here on BoP and you get those
the
things a year early. But he needs
the
competition,
last
but I'm just very happy with it. Yeah.
the last thing, because I do want to sign off, I'll let you sign off. The last thing I'm gonna say is, the amount of times I've hated individualization of footballers. I can't stand it. I've always hated it. I hate the top tens. I hate all that crap. It's the bane of my existence. And when we look at defensive unity and we look at our defensive unit, what is the ones people look at that left hand side, and look at that graph with that one blue zone on the left side and think, oh, it's all Gabriel's fault. No, I refuse to have it. It's there's a glaring issue in terms of defensive transitions. When we have an aggressive centre back in Gabriel, you need a fullback that is a good in the defensive transitions to cover, and that's by design. It's not like he's actually okay. I'm not tracking back. He runs back, but the
Uh,
issue is when you're yeah, go on.
Yeah, really quickly, like Gabriel's ceiling is a lot bigger than Evan Ndika's. Right now, Evan Ndika's got a little bit more consistency with his ball playing, but he's an equally very good channel defender and 1v1 person, which is why I wanted him, by the way. He's such a good complement to what Gabby provides, and he'll allow us to go man v man in the back line as well. Like Evan Ndika is a phenomenal channel defender, but he's got better ball playing abilities than Gabriel. The thing is, Gabriel's got a lot more ceiling because Evan Ndika won't carry the same goal threat going forward. But also, I think if you fix Gabriel's first touch and his gait, he's got better line breakers on the floor in his ground
Yeah.
passing. So Evan Ndika is a little bit more of the half space crossing type of center back. You'll find whenever he receives, he'll do a half space cross. But he is a little bit more cultured on the ball than Gabriel. But I think he doesn't have the same X factor that Gabriel does. And while he is an amazing defender, Gabriel for me is one of the most dominant, physically imposing center backs in the world. He just doesn't have moments where he's comfortable in build up. And that's really what it is for me. And of course, you've got the really fun carbohydrate that I managed to convince on Arsenal Twitter. But look, mate, you're getting love in the comments, and I think it's
There we
about
go.
that time. So, guys, thank you so much
Just
for sticking with
go
us.
on.
In terms of all of the socials, you can find me at GeorgeV_AFC. Current, of course, at Current BoP. And look, Chris is coming. He's just having a little bit of difficulties, so we send our best wishes out to him. You can find him at CKFTBL, and he'll probably be back for the preview. So make sure you guys hit the like, comment, subscribe, and that bell for notification to know when, in fact, we do upload. We're going to be back tomorrow with a preview for Southampton. Guys, they've got a lot of injuries. Lavia, Belakocha, Ainsley can't play. Am I missing somebody? But we will talk about it as
Kyle
well.
Walker
So
Peters.
Kyle Walker Peters, yes, of course. No, respectfully, it is time to move on from Rob Holding, but we'll get there in another. That's why I keep suggesting Evan Ndika. But guys, thank you so much. Please make sure you guys comment what we can improve. We always love to hear improvements that we can do. And thank you again so much. Like we don't say it enough, but I just wanted to take 10 seconds to thank everybody in terms of our supporters. The engagement has been just brilliant recently, and we want it to improve. So you guys, thank you so much. A big shout out to all of you guys that enjoy BoP, and we will be back tomorrow. So make sure you guys keep your eyes peeled for that preview and review that are coming up because we got a lot of games, lads, and we're gonna go for a perfect record. So thank you so much. We'll catch you guys tomorrow, and I hope everybody has a really great weekend. Otherwise, so peace, everybody.
Bye.